Doctors change lives every day, but what happens when life changes yours? A single injury, a sudden illness. Your career, your income, your future can shift in an instant. The best physicians don't just plan for success, they protect it. At Set for Life Insurance, they believe financial security isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. True own occupation disability insurance ensures that no matter what happens, your future stays in your hands. Because protecting your income means protecting everything you've built. Visit drpodcastnetwork.co/set4life today. Secure your future before life makes the choice for you.
Not a good look for our profession.
How in the name of common sense did this ever get this far? Vaccines are not seek and destroy missions.
Because he was so severe.
This is nuts.
One of the top 20 things that she has discovered with her research company, Progenobiome, medicine has been corrupted. Where we go from here now, I don't know. Well, it doesn't work.
So angry. Punishable jail time.
Literally, this makes me believe we live in the Matrix.
Like, deadliest year in U.S. history.
It wasn't a question of if, but when.
This first red.
If it doesn't work and it's safe, put it in a little Fauci Pez dispenser, give it to the patient, and shut the family up.
It's going to get worse and worse and worse.
He gave Fauci an award for being a hero of the pandemic.
This has been a problem.
These were lies.
Let's talk about the healthcare professionals supporting this.
In the meantime, what was going on behind the scenes?
Irony of the whole thing is,
Harvey's 100% correct.
This is freaking annoying.
Ultimately, we need to have hope for America.
What is going on here? What has poisoned your mind? Buckle up, kids.
Welcome, everyone, to BS Free MD again, where we bring you unfiltered, thought-provoking conversation with the world's most influential thinkers and change makers. And today's episode is truly special because we are joined by one of the most influential voices of our time, Dr. Naomi Wolf. Dr. Wolf is a force of nature, a best-selling author of 8 groundbreaking books, a journalist, a professor, and the co-founder of and CEO of dailyclout.io, a civic tech platform empowering citizens to reclaim their voice in democracy. A Yale graduate with a doctorate from Oxford, Dr. Wolf has been a trailblazer in activism for decades and speaking on issues of gender, liberty, journalism, and foreign policy. Her latest book, The Pfizer Papers, Pfizer's Crimes Against Humanity, co-authored with Amy Kelly, shines a critical light on the COVID-19 vaccine trials and their implications for public health, transparency, and human rights. If you followed our more recent episodes of our podcast, you know we had the privilege of speaking with Amy Kelly, who gave us incredible overview of the book. And today we're going deeper, not just into the Pfizer Papers, but also into Dr. Wolf's unparalleled career, her advocacy for liberty, and the courage it takes to challenge the most powerful institutions in the world. So this episode is more than just about one book, but it's about the journey, the fight for truth, and what it means to stand up for humanity. Welcome, Dr. Wolf. We're so honored to have you here.
I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So this is quite a journey from the feminist icon, the writer of the beauty myth, to I had to look at your Wikipedia this morning, and it's like feminist, political influencer, conspiracy theorist, and I'm like, I think that should actually just say truth teller on there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Sorry. Sorry.
No problem.
Thank you.
So could you give us a little bit of the journey from and I don't think it's a long journey, but the journey from Yale, Oxford graduate to now you're being labeled as this kind of fringe person.
Sure. Well, interestingly, that Wikipedia entry and really every bio of mine and every kind of legacy media outlet or bio of well-known people outlet all over the world changed overnight in July of 2021 when Twitter and Facebook, at the behest, as we found out later, of the White House and the CDC, changed, deplatformed me and changed my bio. And clearly AI was in use at that time, even though it hadn't been announced yet, because my bio was changed all over the world at the same time. So it used to be Rhodes Scholar, advisor to a president and a vice president, author of 8 bestsellers, a number of awards and accolades, and then overnight it was conspiracy theorist. So we'll see if the Trump administration being in power changes it again. It's sad that reality is so manipulated, or even reputations are so manipulated by algorithms these days that are, in turn manipulated by political events or corporate financial pressures, as it turned out with the reason that I was smeared, which was the influence on media and government of pharma money, and specifically the criticisms I was raising about damage to women's menstrual health with the mRNA injections. So I don't feel it's been any kind of journey at all, because I'm exactly the same person doing exactly the same work. You mentioned the phrase feminist icon, and, I'll take it, because for 40 years, I became a feminist icon, on the left, in the legacy media, in the center, all over the world, for literally the exact same kind of work. My focus has been for decades on women's sexual and reproductive health, women's well-being, children's well-being, and civil liberties, like literally no difference. And my method, which is to start, as a journalist, it's always important to, I'm sure as doctors, you would agree with this, it's always important to listen to eyewitness accounts that people have of their own bodies. That's in the history of women's health and medical scandals or pharmaceutical scandals related to women's health and to fertility. The story often begins with a handful of women saying, I had a baby whose arms and legs were underdeveloped, or I took an anti-nausea medication, thalidomide, right? Or, I had an IUD and it pierced my cervix, or, I have silicone breast implants and now I have autoimmune disease symptoms, right? So the stories about women's health never begin in the medical journals. They, in my long history of studying the history of women's health and well-being and the medical treatment of women, they begin with women themselves speaking up or talking to each other and saying, something's wrong here. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I haven't gone anywhere. The world has changed. The kind of reporting I've always done, for which I was seen as a reporter or a nonfiction writer, almost doesn't exist anymore, except in independent, quote unquote fringe media. Legacy media collapsed, and now we know why. They were taking government money to lie, and they were taking pharma money to lie. So no one trusts them anymore. And the advocacy for women, I don't know what happened to all the feminists who used to know very well that Big Pharma was no friend of women's. That is not a new news story. Everyone used to know that. I don't know what happened to all the feminists. I mean, this is your line of work, your colleagues. How is it possible that 99.99% of obstetricians and gynecologists injected pregnant women with an experimental intervention? Like, what happened to everyone's knowledge that you don't experiment on pregnant women? I could go on and on, but my answer is obviously in many ways I haven't changed at all. Everyone else just got very corrupt.
No, I think that's exactly it. I mean, I was thinking about this over the last couple of days, knowing that we were gonna chat, and this business of, you've been standing up for liberty for your entire career. So regardless of whether you have an R or a D or whatever religious tradition, or you're fighting for principles bigger than yourself. And I think what we found out during the last 5 years is who was willing to stand up for principles bigger than themselves. Right. And the reality, sadly, was very few people. I mean, a tiny percentage of people were willing to do it. I mean, you talk about, medicine starting with what you see with your own eyes. When May and I were really red-pilled was two things. The first one was about 2 or 3 months after the vaccine rolled out in 2021, we started seeing all the side effects. I mean, we're working in a busy urgent care. May saw her first case of POTS. myocarditis, people getting a shot in their arm and having it swollen for months at a time, Moderna arm, all of this. And we'd go to our colleagues and we'd say, this is crazy. There's only one parameter that's changed. This is the shot doing this. And the answer across the board, it's something, but it's not that.
God, did they say more about that? Because I'm always interested in how people kind of justify their evil. What your intelligent, thoughtful, well-educated colleagues, what did they say in addition to it can't be that? Like, why can't it be that? Did they add any more information, or they just stopped there?
I would say from what I'm remembering the most, echoing through my brain, is that they believed what the CDC, what the talking heads on TV, the authorities were saying, that it was tested, proven safe and effective, and that it couldn't be that causing it. It had to be the infection, and that they were more protected if they hadn't had the jab. It would have been worse. And that's that was the talking point that kind of stuck with me. What about you?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, go.
Well, I don't want to interrupt your husband or partner, co-host.
Yeah. 33 years. So
both, all of it. He's all three.
Yeah, no, keep going, because I'm just as mesmerized or confused by this as anyone, because
and I'm gonna hop in and say the other thing that really boggled us is one of our partners that worked with us. She also then moved out of that urgent care COVID clinic when things changed, and was working with some OBs. She's a PA in the OB-GYN department, and she was calling us just exasperated because they were seeing record numbers of miscarriages and fetal loss and demise. And she started to question women in the clinic and would say, what did you do different? Anything that's you changed? Because the only thing, the theme was the only thing different was I had a COVID vaccine 2 or 3 weeks ago. Could it be that? And when when our partner would ask her colleagues about it, like, do you think it could be that? And they'd be like, no, absolutely not that, anything but. Let's go down the clotting risk, or they would just instantly dismiss it, not even consider it.
Bizarre.
It is.
Well, I guess my follow-up questions are this, and I want to stress to your audience, I'm not a medical doctor. I have a zero medical or even scientific training beyond, 8th grade biology. My DPhil is in Victorian poetry, so I'm completely not trained. That said, I stress this because even I, as an English major, know that you can't get a safe and effective vaccine in 10 months, no. Right? You can't, it's not physically possible. These things typically take 10 to 15 years to go through trials. And also, it wasn't FDA approved. It was an emergency use authorization. So why would, your colleagues should know that better than I do, right? So why would they have suspended the normal rules of research in assuming that when the CDC said safe and effective, that could be true in 10 months without FDA approval?
Well, they talk about how it actually was studied. There's this sort of myth that it was studied for 10 years before, even though mRNA, they never ever got it to work until magically November.
Well, they got it to work to damage human fertility, which is very interesting. They knew that in 2017, but go ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say, your point about giving this to pregnant women, the other thing that really, that stood out to us too in our whole careers. Tim did obstetrics, and it was like, you never give a new agent medicine to pregnant women. And in the COVID clinic we were working at, there was a nurse who was pregnant, and the first thing, as soon as she could get it, I forget how many months along she was, doesn't matter, 4 to 6. I thought, what the heck? And it was interesting because she, as a person, is a very, and I hate to use terms, but she was liberal, stood up for women's rights, very vocal about that. And I'm like, this makes no sense to me, because usually people that lean that way are all about minimal type stuff, minimal drugs, more natural, not trusting authority. And that's where our minds got warped with all of this. It's like everything flipped and was backwards.
Everything reversed. Absolutely.
Right?
I have a section about that in my book, The Bodies of Others, which I wrote in 2023, that just goes through the surreal nature of what you just described. I come from the left. I've been a liberal all my life. I think I'm still a classical liberal, believe it or not, with a big anti-authoritarian, libertarian bent. But all these liberals used to know my body, my choice, and then they were completely on board with a two-tier Jim Crow type society outlawed by this 1964 Civil Rights Act, in which, as an unvaccinated person, I had fewer rights than vaccinated populations. They were fine with that. They were fine with, again, I mentioned all these feminist health advocates, the Our Bodies Ourselves crowd. Like, where were they, when the evidence of menstrual dysregulation or miscarriages this day began to surface? Like, by now, none of the stories I broke, or that my team of 3,250 doctors and scientists who went through these 450,000 Pfizer documents and created the 109 reports, of which the top ones are in the Pfizer Papers book that you mentioned. None of these stories are now just us, right? They've all been confirmed. The miscarriage rates less widely known, but the menstrual damage is widely known. Many peer-reviewed studies have confirmed it. Where are the feminists? Where are the women's health advocates? Where are the women's health advocates saying you can't fire a woman? This is like basic feminist human rights law. You can't fire a woman because her body is or isn't X, right? That is well established.
America spends more on healthcare than any other country, yet we rank 48th in life expectancy. We spend trillions, but 200,000 insured people still declare medical bankruptcy every year. Clearly, the system is broken. But what if there was a way to take back control, to break free from inflated costs and red tape? That's exactly why Crowd Health was created, a smarter, more transparent way to pay for healthcare. No middleman, no bureaucracy. Just a community of people helping each other when it matters most. Join the revolution. Go to joincrowdhealth.com and use promo code BSFREE for a discount on your first 3 months. Because your health should be in your hands, not theirs.
None of it made sense. And yeah, you're right. The same population that would not put anything but Burt's Bees, diaper balm on their baby's bottom and, wouldn't shop anywhere but at Whole Foods, were racing, not just the first time, but the second time, the third time, to embrace this pharmaceutical intervention. And yes, the same population that used to be, oh, we know governments can lie to us. We know that, big corporations can lie to us. It's like that knowledge just got erased from their brains. To this day, I don't understand it. I'm really beginning to wonder if there's some, I'm sure you guys have followed developments like the publication of Dr. Michael Nell's book, The Indoctrinated Brain. And if not, I highly recommend it. He's a neuroscientist who looked at the combination of the injection, which causes prefrontal cortex damage, right, crossing the blood-brain barrier, which was a story we broke early on as well, before his book came out, and the effect of propaganda and things like isolation, social deprivation, repetition, fear, right? And so I think a portion of the population seems clearly to be brain damaged and, brainwashed to this day. However, what I really don't understand, and I fear there is some kind of Neuralink or, like 5G transmission or something, some technology we don't understand, is that the same sound bites are being beamed to the same group of people. They'll say, like, I get emails from old friends breaking up with me in an identical language. Right? It's like your colleague saying the same thing. It can't be this, it's got to be that. Some of that is repetition, but I just don't understand, unless there's some intervention, some technology we don't, I don't want to go further afield than the evidence, but having looked at all the material evidence, including brain damage, including propaganda, including isolation, I've never seen in history that huge swaths of certain demographics say exactly the same things and react in exactly the same way. Not even Nazi Germany, like it's just beyond anything we've seen before. So maybe this is just the most complete example of mass digital kind of propagandizing that's ever been achieved, and that did it. But I really just wonder if there's something else of which we're not aware.
Well,
scary thoughts, right? But
yeah,
it makes you wonder.
But I think there's, and I know that you have discussed this a lot. I've listened to your interviews with Eric Metaxas, and the whole spiritual realm, I think, has to not be ignored, because there's something so transcendently crazy about what's going on. You know, May has been screaming from the rooftops. Like, we've done several interviews with a lot of people in the, you know, trans or you know, detransitioning world and all this. And she's like, where are the feminists? Where are the feminists? You know, when an 18-year-old man is playing on a high school girls basketball team, like that to me is like this, like that's really obvious. It's like we're sending our children to pediatricians that are part of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and they're supposed to take care of boys and girls, and they don't know the difference between a boy and a girl. Like, how is that possible? Right. I mean, you can kind of warp your mind into, you know, calling the COVID shot a vaccine, and somehow this has this cult-like effect because it's a vaccine and people are mesmerized by that and don't want to be called an anti-vaxxer. But not knowing the difference between boys and girls, like,
I know, which is knowledge that every doctor and scientist had in elementary school, like 5 years ago. Yeah, no, it's surreal. I just posted an excerpt from a story from The Intercept, which was about something completely different. But one of the things it characterized was what they called anti-trans legislation out of the White House. And they said, this legislation asserts that there are two biological sexes, which is not supported by medical science. And I'm like, oh, you know, right? What happened to the human species? That is not true, but it's, you know, it was a serious, respected publication saying it. No, it's that you're right. That's another piece of this. And you're right to bring in this spiritual element. You know, it's like a kingdom of lies. They're all the same set of lies. They're pernicious lies, right? I mean, I support LGBTQ rights, but this is, you know, what's going on with putting men in women's and girls' sports, and also this I would say weaponization of trans issues to erase the female. That's really what I see. It should be a feminist issue. I think a lot of feminists are scared to speak up because there's such organized smearing or criticism of them, and you don't want to be seen as anti-LGBTQ rights, you know, right? I really love and support the gay community and the lesbian community, and it's you know, we're in a time where those distinctions are hard to draw because everything's very binary, and you know, there are mobs on social media. But the how can I put it? I know that this is artificially, I would say, created as a wedge issue, but also inflamed, because I wrote my thesis on the history of gay rights in the 19th and 20th century. And you know, there have been people who cross-dressed forever in every culture, right? That's nothing new. But never, ever, 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 up until 5 years ago, did men dressing as women want to erase, damage, belittle the feminine, ever. You know, the whole transsexual or transvestite, male to female cross-dressers, which is what we used to call them, or people who had sex change operations who were still male to female sex change, like Jan Morris, the writer. They respected the feminine. They wanted to participate in the feminine. They weren't trying to degrade or erase the feminine. So I see a much bigger agenda. You know, I hate to say in shorthand transhumanist agenda, which is something I didn't used to believe in, and now I think it's a fully developed, you know, ideology, right? But it turns out that maybe women really are sacred because there's so much energy being directed spiritually at saying they don't exist, or that, you know, you can be a woman by putting on a dress. And none of the other things that, or you're a birthing person or a lactating person. That has
I know that what we were talking about that just came out again in the news. In Canada they were using the term
front hole
instead
of cervix.
Yes, when referring to yes.
The Canadian Cancer Association wanted to be gender neutral in describing who should get a cervical, like a pap smear, right? And so they said people with front holes.
That's how they were going to refer to it. Front holes.
Yes.
Hole.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just Satan at work, man. That's
look that one up.
No, I'll send it to you.
Bungling bureaucrat isn't going to come up with anything that degrading.
Yeah.
Front holes. So we are front-holed people. Where's his hole? I mean, sorry, I don't mean to be rude.
Right.
Men have front holes too. They're just kind of in a different appendage. I don't understand.
Yeah, exactly.
That, and then now currently.
Oh, they're not counting the urethra. Well, I don't understand
I
couldn't figure it out either. But
inseminated person.
And now
you saw that one,
yes.
right?
I did. It's all so evil. I mean, it's just evil, right? Like again,
and I'm screaming from the top of my lungs. I'm like, this is disgusting, and it offends me. I've never considered myself a feminist, but I guess I am, because if I'm standing up for what I believe and protect, I mean, seriously, I'm like, where are all the other true feminists screaming from the rooftops? Jane Fonda and everybody, like, come on.
What do they call men in this, nomenclature, or have they not gotten around to that yet?
I don't know, but I'm filtering myself because I'm coming.
Because this is very graphic stuff we're dealing with. I mean, appendaged people.
Yes.
I know. I mean, exactly. Like we laugh, but it's frightening because
I choose torch bearer.
Oh my gosh.
It's like,
but
you see, what's happening is that then young kids, they grow up with this. It's being indoctrinated in the schools, the teachers' influence. I mean, you see it, and it frightens me.
It did. I thought it was crazy right-wing religious fanatics who are saying they're indoctrinating kids in the schools. They're showing them pornography. And then I saw some of what they're showing kids in books that, like, I used to go to galas for the American Library Association. It's like, don't censor books. Don't censor, what is it, Queer Like Me. And then I looked at Queer Like Me, and it's like straight pornography, whether it's gay or straight. It's like fellatio, like full on, pervy, like inappropriate. I mean, not the fellatio is pervy for adults, but they're sexualizing kids in such a graphic way and I say this as a survivor of sexual assault, in a context that should be completely safe. No adult, I used to believe in sex education schools, and now I think no adult should be talking to kids about sex except their parents. Period. Full stop. There's no reason. Whatever we lose by kids, maybe some kids not learning the facts of life till, later in life, whatever the risks there, it is nothing compared to the risks of what's happened to generations now of being sexualized by adults in school. And then that becomes their identity. How do you, I'm really noticing there are no, I'm not saying any one sexuality is better than any other, except obviously, pedophilia and bestiality, no. But I don't see any heterosexual love stories anymore. And I don't see any depictions of families anymore that are heterosexual families, men and women. You used to see in Western culture so many representations of motherhood as a beautiful thing, with moms caring for children. Literally, you almost never see that anymore. It is a very clearly AI-driven kind of manipulation of our culture, and it's having an effect on kids. I mean, I'm noticing on Netflix movies, we could go on and on, but the storyline is often for shows aimed at young women. These men are abusive or treacherous, but your best girlfriend is your true soulmate, right? And then the two women go off into the desert. Now, best girlfriends are wonderful, but it's just this constant propaganda that, the other sex is treacherous or, manipulative or not to be trusted. And really there's only safety in same-sex relationships. And I'm sure that this is not coming from the gay and lesbian community. They never had that agenda. to destroy the family or the heterosexual family, or to, privilege one sexuality over another. That was never a part of the gay rights movement, ever.
Well,
it isn't now. It's totally artificial. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, no, my gay friends want to be treated like me, which is, you know what? We go skiing together and we don't talk about our sexual relationships because it's really nobody else's business. Like, isn't that just being a grown up? I mean, I just like all of the hypersexualization kind of drives me crazy because it doesn't, I don't know how that ends anywhere good.
Right. Well, it is quite, again, artificial. Like, you can see when a culture is organic and when something's just, being driven in organically. And it does, I mean, you mentioned something important, which is there's a lot of fracturing of relationships, as a result of these wedge issues, these, it's not just, trans issues, but like vax issues. Are you a Trumper? Are you not a Trumper? Are you, right wing, left wing, Israel? Like, and again, social media is designed to drive people into silos, but the net effect is, we look at our own. I mean, I may be hypersensitive to this because of the way I was completely ejected from my community in 2021, and I'm very cynical that I'm being kind of de-canceled now that Trump's in power, which is just as horrible, right? If you hate me, keep hating me, don't reverse. Right. There's a new guy in power, but the bottom line is the fracturing of our relationships in our community and our families, and I think there's been great progress in the last 5 years in that regard. It's directed west, by the way. It's not directed the same worldwide. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we know that you've got a time crunch here, and we really appreciate you being here. How can we wrap this up by you giving us a little bit of quick advice on how people who want to speak up, kind of maybe create change, and try to be emboldened and empowered like you, but not be afraid of the consequences, I guess, when we're talking about feminists speaking up, or just in general, people standing up in their community. Any thoughts or advice on how to go do that?
Well, I think you guys have better advice than I do because you did it, in a job in which there was a lot more to lose, right? But I would say do what these guys did. Quit your jobs if you possibly can. If there's no way to speak up honestly within your profession, find another way to have an income, even if it means you're having many fewer perks and luxuries. I mean, people can get away with. What I've learned for sure is that you can live with a lot less, not with nothing, but with a lot less and your integrity. But you cannot live with all the money in the world and not have your integrity. I mean, I've witnessed that over and over. People collapse, they get sick, they get depressed, with all the money in the world and lying day after day, for sure. I would say for sure you don't need a giant platform that people forget how influential they are in their own circles, their own community, their own church or synagogue, and I always end by saying, the most powerful thing you can do is have a potluck, right? I mean, the rebuilding of community really starts with invite 40 people, 40 of your neighbors and friends, including people you don't know very well, have them bring food so you're not on the hook for all the food. And, just have a subject, maybe start, organize a little activity, nothing huge. Let's have a community garden, or what do we do if there's a disaster? How about a book club, or who knows how to do first aid if there's, just organize yourselves. And, and it's very important to know where your food comes from. I always say that things are a little more stable now with the Trump administration, but in Europe, people are completely at the mercy of the state still, and learn to shoot, have a weapon, self-defense. But going back to what you guys said, the bottom line is spiritual. Like, it doesn't end here. That's what I fully believe. Not everyone believes that, but I happen to believe it. And so I fully believe that someday you will be asked, to account for what you did in a time of lies and mass murder, and you'll have to answer. And so I would just say, live every day of your life if you know that someday you'll be accountable for what you choose that day.
Oh boy. No, that was wonderful.
Yep.
What a great way to wrap that up. We could talk to you for hours. This has just been an absolute delight.
Thank you.
We so
Well,
appreciate your time. For our listeners who want to follow you further, they can find you right at thedailyclout.io and
on Substack.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And please ask your listeners to order the Pfizer Papers on Amazon. Very important.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. We'll put the links in what we did before when Amy Kelly was on. We'll do that for sure again here. And we so appreciate your time and coming on. And this has been inspiring and just a pleasure again to have this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
You as well.
Bye.
All right.